Hello, welcome to the House of Wellness. Great to be with you today from Brighton Beach here in Melbourne. Not necessarily known for our magnificent beaches, but this is about as good as it gets. Dr. Nick Carr, good to see you. Joe Stanley and Jackie Felgate. Welcome, everyone.
It is absolutely gorgeous here. And, you know, last week we were talking about the health benefits of blue spaces, and here we are putting it to the test. It's gorgeous.
We work very hard here on the House of Wellness, don't we? And the air down here today, gorgeous. But did you know, even sitting in traffic for just a couple of hours can actually change your brain, Dr. Nick?
Yeah, it's absolutely right, Jack, because air pollution affects the parts of the brain that deal with emotions. So staying away from exhaust fumes, yeah, really much better for your mental health.
And you can feel that today, breathing in this beautiful sea breeze and having the soft sand beneath your toes too, Jack.
Absolutely love it. I love this part of Melbourne. I'm often walking next to the sea. Love it. Don't go in. Love a walk on the beach, but I can't run on the beach. I find that so hard.
I think the trick is to stick to the hard sand, not the soft sand. It's not that good for the calves.
Well, it's true, Jack, because the soft sand is so much harder work.
Well, whether you love it or loathe it, it is a good workout, isn't it? Soft sand or hard sand. And someone who knows more about it than maybe anyone in Australia is champion beach sprinter Jake Lynch, and here he is to tell us all about it.
So with beach sprinting, as opposed to, I guess, running on track or grass, for example, on beach it's kind of more muscular based. So if you're running on track or a grass, it's a lot stiffer on the joints and the tendons and stuff. If you're running on beach, for example, it's a lot more muscular based. So you've got to use your muscles more so to propel yourself forward and faster down the sand. Only because you get different surfaces on the sand where if it's quite soft on the sand surface, it gives way as well. So as you stride, each stride sinks into the ground as opposed to your ankle landing on the ground and the impact driving straight to your tendons and ligaments. The tips I'd give to anyone just starting out in soft sand running, the number one would be start off slow. Don't go hell for leather on your first sprint because you're more prone to injuries. Build up your pace, build into the session, and then you'll get through the session a lot easier that way. If you can, track down a reliable coach, whether they're a track coach or a beach sprint coach, there's plenty going around. If you can do some sessions with them to pick their brain, they can teach you the ideal technique and mechanics. Number three, I'd probably say film yourself, record it with your iPhone if you've got a stand or if you've got a friend to film it. If you're starting out and you're struggling and you're running tight or you're leaning too far forward, you can go back to your footage and you can kind of look at what's not feeling right, just so you're getting that instant feedback and you can know what to improve on next time.
What an absolute champion Jake Lynch is, Australian Surf Lifesaving Athlete of the Year. And do you know what I love more than anything? He's back at the nippers, putting in and coaching the next generation. Good on him.
And we need our lifesavers more than ever. This summer is one of the worst on record for drownings.
Yeah, men between the ages of 35 and 64 are most affected. And really sadly, the emergency rooms, they see far too many kids every summer.
Yeah, one of the tragic stories, Nick, as you know, is that it's a lot of people from overseas that haven't learnt to swim who are the ones most at risk.
Because growing up in Australia, of course, swimming lessons, they really were a rite of passage, weren't they? But Australia's peak swimming body has warned they're not the priority they once were.
56% of parents thought that their children couldn't get out of an emergency situation in the water. We've got potentially a whole cohort of kids that have never learned how to swim. Almost as many people that weren't in lessons said that they had no intention of going into lessons. Actually, that's a recipe for disaster. Drownings go up in a cycle where the kids haven't learnt. And we've already seen that during COVID, 15% increase in drownings over the last summer, and that's 24% up on the 10-year average. So this is something that needs to be top of mind on a continuous basis. The number of people in lessons is so low at the moment because we got out of the habit of going to swimming lessons during COVID. Secondly, there's so many opportunities for kids these days, lots of extracurricular activities that they can do. And also the cost of lessons is actually quite high. And so I guess we say if you're going to spend your money on any of those extracurricular activities, learn to swim should be the most important because it is an essential life skill.
I don't know about you, Jack, but I find that a bit disturbing that most Aussie parents don't think their kids could actually swim to safety in an emergency.
Yeah, and that half don't actually take their kids to swimming lessons. And Joe, with my kids, it's amazing when they're at swimming lessons how many kids in school can't swim yet.
Well, you know, Brenda mentioned there that kids are so busy these days and there's that budget priority which can be really, really hard for parents. But I also think if you're not living in an area where you are surrounded or near water and you don't have that water-loving lifestyle, I know for us it just wasn't a priority priority in our house.
And these days, most drownings actually occur in oceans, rivers and lakes. So the pool safety message seems to have gotten through, but there's still a big problem with water safety out in nature.
I know your point, Joe, but it seems probably on the top of the list, isn't it, in terms of a country that's surrounded by water, wanting to make sure your kids can swim. Well, changing gears slightly, it was all about low-fat milk there for a while and sugar-free. Now, Jack, about the kind of salt that you've got on your table.
And there are so many choices too. I don't mind a bit of salt, actually.
Well, that's true. We're going to give salt a shakedown right after this.
Isn't it glorious, Dr. Nick, to be down here on this beautiful sunny day at the world-famous beach boxes? It always makes me think of the Australian Open winner coming down here with the trophy. And did you know that these owners, they can paint the box whatever colour they like? There's no restrictions.
Well, it's good that they've hung in there because they were actually built 1860s and they were there to protect the bather's modesty. And they were almost phased out a few decades ago, but they became heritage listed.
Well, times have changed, haven't they? But one thing that hasn't changed is we're constantly talking on this show about the impact of blue spaces. But tell me a little bit about the impact of salt water on our health.
Well, 200 years ago, it was thought that if you hopped into these nice, cold, salty sea waves, it was really good for anything, things like leprosy or even melancholy. I'm not too sure about those, but there are some health benefits.
I just remember growing up, my mum saying to me to hop in the sea if you had a little scratch or an abrasion, that the salt water will be good for you.
Well, you won't be too surprised to know your mum was right. Because apart
She'll love to hear that.
Yeah, because apart from salt, the seawater is rich with minerals, things like zinc, iron, magnesium and potassium. And these have anti-inflammatory properties which are really good to heal damaged skin.
You don't want to eat it though, do you?
No, so I want to go back to salt. Do you remember that line from the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge?
Tell me.
Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Just a reminder that seawater is far too salty to be safe for human consumption.
So great for a swim, great for your skin, but you certainly want to stay away from the salt shaker. That's anything but for your health.
I don't think most people appreciate how bad salt is for them. And I don't think people mostly like being told that salt's bad for them because, you know, we come from a society where it's normal to have salt on the table, it's normal to add salt to food, and most people have a palate that is adjusted to a high salt intake. The problem with salt is the sodium in salt. So salt is made up of sodium and chloride. And what sodium does is progressively pushes up your blood pressure throughout your life, and that greatly increases your risk of getting strokes, heart attacks, and kidney disease. We did a really big study because we wanted to try and prove once and for all what the benefits of reducing the amount of salt you eat might be. And the way we did it is we got 21,000 people over 5 years, and we gave half of them just regular salt as usual, and the other half we gave what's called a salt substitute. And a salt substitute is a product which takes some of the sodium chloride out and replaces it with potassium chloride. And the benefit of that is that, one, you're eating less sodium, so your blood pressure doesn't go up as much, but you're also eating more potassium. And potassium is the stuff that's in fruits and vegetables. It's good for you, and it actually also lowers your blood pressure a bit.
年里吃年吃的就是的口味很重，就是3月过了以后，人家发好的地南盐，吃味吃得很强了，对这个身体好了，在3月也正常。
We did it in China, not because we thought it would only work in China, but because it was a good place to do the experiment. If you want to test whether changing the amount of salt people eat actually affects their health, you've actually got to be able to change the amount of salt they eat. And in Australia, salt comes in hundreds and hundreds of different packaged foods, and it's just not feasible to do this sort of study. In rural China, where we did the project, almost all of the salt that people eat is salt that they add at home when they're cooking. So it's very easy for us just to go and say, look, instead of using that salt, use this salt. People are often surprised in Australia to hear that the main source of salt in the diet is actually bread. And that's not because bread's super salty, but it's because people tend to eat quite a bit of bread. Other sources of salt people don't expect are breakfast cereals. There are more obvious ones like cheeses that people and processed meats. If you could drop your salt intake from 10 grams a day to 5 grams a day, and you could sustain that, which I have to say is incredibly unlikely because it's a really difficult thing to do, you would hugely decrease your future risks of having a stroke, a heart attack, or kidney disease. It would lower your blood pressure by more than taking blood pressure lowering drugs, and it would be a really valuable thing for you to do for your health. If you eat too much salt today, tomorrow, for the next week, you're not going to experience any acute risk of suddenly dying or suddenly having a stroke or a heart attack. The problem with salt is that the effects accumulate over months and years, and when you get into middle and older age, you have greatly increased risks of the most common causes of death in Australia. And the reason why it's so important is that it affects almost everyone, because everyone eats more salt than they need, and they do it every day, and they do it for years. And so it's a little bit of increased risk in everyone in pretty much the world that adds up to literally millions of people having strokes, heart attacks, and dying prematurely each year because of excess salt consumption.
生活改变的身体好啊，血压正常了，今天看见我的血压很正常。
We did the study because we thought that reducing salt intake would decrease the risks of stroke, heart attack, premature death, and we showed all of those things very convincingly.
So what about that, Joe? 1 teaspoon of salt a day? Is that your go?
I don't think I would have anywhere near as much as that. That seems like a lot. I put it on my chips and I put it in my mashed potato. That's it.
So they tell me there's 35 grams of salt in every litre of seawater, and the saltiest ocean is not the one in front of you and I right now, Joe, but it is the Atlantic.
Well, there you go.
I love getting in the salt water. It's calling me right now, actually.
Well, you know what? You've got to find what's right for you. And so Heinzie this week turns his health dial up to 11, where he tries something. It's a spinal tap with a twist, let's just say that. And I have to say, I have never seen anything like this.
Every day, I read or hear about amazing holistic approaches to dealing with the human condition. When things go a bit off track, we're lucky enough to live in an age where we have access to all kinds of treatments. It's a case of experimenting and finding what's right for you. That's how I'm approaching Spinal Energetics, which is all about aligning body, mind, and spirituality to expand the human experience. Let's go.
So, this arm represents emotional stress and its storage in your system. So, it's just going to be a gentle pull, but what it might feel like is that you're getting electrocuted all the way up to here. So, it's just a pull like that, okay, but it's going to feel a little bit stronger, all right? So, I'll let you know when I'm going into your system, which I am now.
Sarah Jane, what is Spinal Energetics?
Spinal Energetics is a new modality, and it's basically blending the East and the West and integrating the mind and the body. So we're working through the energetic field to touch the parts of the nervous system that are storing bound tension and stress, and things such as emotional trauma from their past, or anything really, anything that that person's gone through. Spinal Energetics is almost like a fingerprint of that person and their life. Is it sore in here? Yeah, so that's your vagus nerve. So you're a little bit stressed. So we'll do this side, which represents the physical. You're like, please don't. But this side isn't as painful usually.
Oh.
Okay. I have a background in psychology, and then I went on and studied health science and clinical science and chiropractic, and then did my postgraduate studies in Buddhism, and I'm currently doing my master's in Chinese medicine and acupuncture. But Spinal Energetics is something that I've created after working with so many wonderful mentors and looking at other forms of energetic work, as well as chiropractic work, and as well as talk therapy work, all sorts of things, and it's kind of blended it into one. Okay, I'm just going to check your stomach briefly, and then we'll roll you over and we'll do some of the energetic stuff. Okay, so see how it's sore in there? I'm thinking it's the neck, because see how it goes really tight? So the more tension it is in the body, the higher up it is in the body.
Okay.
So let's have a look.
Ah.
Is it sore in there?
That is sore.
Yeah. So you've got two processes going on, one which is in the mental, which means that you think way too much, The other is you don't trust yourself or your judgment properly. Maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that.
Tell me about the science behind it.
The science behind it?
Yeah.
Well, that's a tricky one, Luke.
Okay. No, I ask because there's going to be a lot of people who hear about us talk about energy and talk about a modality that doesn't even always touch the body.
Yeah.
So I need to kind of press those questions to work out what should we be feeling and where does it come from, you know?
Exactly. So what we're working with is the innate intelligence within someone's system. So the same thing that heals a cut, the same thing that keeps your heart beating, the same thing that digests your food. We're not consciously thinking about that, but what is doing that? That's the innate wisdom within the system. So now we're going to go into all your energetic layers. This is your emotional layer. Mental. So you've got more in your mental. You can see that there's more movement happening in the lower, all right? So now I'm on your chakral system and you'll start seeing that the head is starting to vibrate a little bit, okay?
I believe in energy. I believe you can feel negative energy, walk into the room. I believe you can have low energy. But am I right to say that you view our energy as extending beyond the physical?
100%. So most people think the physical body is where we stop, but in fact, we don't. So just because we can't see it and it's not tangible, that's why most people are under this assumption, but that's just not the case. Now, on that inhale, I want you next time to gently tuck your tailbone down towards the table. So breathing in. Good. Really sending the breath into there, seeing how the bottom is starting to want to move itself, letting that happen. Good, 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 good. See how it's starting to tremor a little bit? Allow that to happen. That is trauma or stress releasing.
Now, when we're talking energy and a modality that might not be familiar to some people, there could be people you've come across who go, could be a bit woo.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
What's your response to that?
I understand it. It's when we don't know something or understand something or it looks strange, we are going to question it. And I don't have a problem with that. I think people should question things that they maybe don't understand, but be open to receiving responses and to trying it when you are maybe not as educated in that area or it's not making sense to you. Good job. There you go. So he's got a bit of anxiety in there as well. That's it, that's it. Good. There you go. Yep, stretch through the legs if you need to. That's it. We're going to find that area where it was tense before. It's a lot looser, which is good. Now we've got some down here though. There you go. Good. That's it. Good. There you go.
Okay, so I can't quite describe what I just experienced, but I'll say this. I did not control the movements of my body at all. That cannot be explained, and I'm going to be thinking about that for quite some time to come. But I'll say this, when you're doing any type of therapy or body work, when you're with a practitioner one-on-one, you can't help but switch off, be off devices, let go, and feel relaxed, which is what I feel right now in this moment. If you're curious about whether it's right for you, there is only one way to find out. Give it a go and see if it works for your body, mind, and spirit.
Now, Nick, did you catch the big news last month? The Super Bowl with Rihanna and that beautiful pregnancy announcement?
It was quite something, wasn't it, Jo? But she was completely overshadowed by her American Sign Language instructor. She absolutely stole the show.
Yes, 20-year-old Justina Miles made Super Bowl history by being the first deaf female performer to sign during the halftime entertainment. And Understandably, she went viral.
Well, I didn't actually see it live on Patience before Super Bowl, but I did see it online afterwards. And oh my goodness, anyone who can upstage Rihanna, she really has some talent.
The Super Bowl halftime entertainment broke barriers, but Neighbours TV star Nathan Borg is doing the same and I'm sure cheered on from the sidelines. Nathan joins us now. Hi, Nathan.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's so awesome to have you on the show. Now, you are a deaf actor and I do wonder, what was your reaction when you saw Justina?
I was really excited, and especially to have a deaf interpreter on screen. I think that real representation was just amazing to see on screen.
So, Nathan, you were the first deaf actor on Neighbours with a cochlear implant. And this absolutely incredible device was invented by an Australian, Graham Clark, and it's now worn by over 600,000 people worldwide, which is amazing.
Now, acting is a pretty difficult road for anyone. It's very hard to break into this industry.
Yes.
But as a deaf actor, what kind of challenges did you have to face?
A lot of challenges. I was kicked out at a full-time course because they believed that me as a deaf person was never going to succeed in the Australian industry, and just a lot of trainers kind of really focused on my identity than my work, and I think I really struggled with that because I really wanted to show how hard I was working as like other hearing people, and I think that challenge, it was very difficult to prove to people that, you know, myself as a deaf person and every other deaf and hard of hearing person can work in the industry just like every other hearing person.
Now, as a deaf person, you're obviously also oral, meaning you can speak. So why are you learning Auslan? Why is that so important for you?
It's important for me because it's another language that I can access to. And, you know, sometimes with my cochlear implant, I can't catch every sound. So Auslan is there for me to have that access. And I do feel lucky in the sense of when I started learning Auslan, I've able to connect a lot of other people who are just like me.
Nathan, thank you so much for joining us on the show. You are supporting and inspiring so many people. Well, Brent and Melinda Phillips are deaf parents who are raising two gorgeous kids, and we're going to meet them next. Nathan, can I ask you to do me a favour?
Yes.
Could you please sign, "Here is the Phillips family"?
So when Taylor was born, the Victorian government had a newborn hearing screening program. So we knew that when she was 1 or 2 days old, the nurse would come to test her hearing. So she had the test and the nurse put out her hand and I could lip read her saying, "Congratulations." Mel and I looked at each other and we weren't too sure what that meant. Is she saying, "Congratulations, she's deaf like us?" Or she's saying, "Congratulations, your daughter's hearing"? So we just wanted to clarify. And then she said, "No, your daughter can hear." And that really impacted us because we didn't really care about the result itself, but we thought about what would happen for those parents who get a diagnosis that their child is deaf. Would the nurse say, "Oh, I'm sorry that your child is deaf"? It's that negative perspective. That really shows how the medical model really influences our society rather than the cultural and linguistic model. It's immediately, do you pass or do you fail? It's not about deafness and hearing and whether people have other language options.
Taylor and Nate, well, their first language was Auslan, which is our primary language. So they learnt to sign, and actually they could learn to sign before they could speak anyway, so that made things easier.
We did consider how they'd be able to develop both languages at the same time, but then we ultimately made a decision to just use Auslan in the home, and then naturally as they went to childcare or they played with their cousins or neighbours, their English would just improve and excel, and now they're fluent in both languages.
So I think it's great to know two different languages because at school we can use English and stuff, and at home we can communicate a different way, like we can use signing, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and we're the only ones in the school that our parents are deaf.
Yes, so when we read to our children, we sometimes would be in Auslan grammar and syntax, and then sometimes we'd sign word by word to make sure that it follows the English syntax and structure.
I think technology is really, well, it's made a big difference in our lives as parents. So this house is actually set up in a way that we don't have to rely on our kids. So we have a front doorbell that has visual alerts and alarms, as well as a fire alarm and a baby crying alarm. So we did have that back in the day, and we'd also have one with a camera so we could check in and see if the crying was anything to worry about.
Taylor and Nate's school previously had Italian being taught as a second language, but then the teachers decide to send a vote out to the parents to choose whether or not they change over to a different language to be taught. And the option was to still teach Italian or Chinese or Auslan, and there was a high percentage of votes leaning towards Auslan, and we felt really proud about that because that meant we could communicate with our kids' friends and we weren't seen as parents with a disability. We were seen as part of the community.
I think we're really proud that our children have our identity, language and culture ingrained within them, and it'll be there forever. They show the right attitude, they're not ashamed, they're not, well, really they just love the language, and they're very visual communicators. They enjoy being among deaf people, going to deaf events and being part of that world, and at the same time they really enjoy their hearing world. So there's a good balance there. Nate and I were watching football recently on TV, and the captions sometimes blocked the ball, so we agreed that we'd turn off the captions. So I switched them off, and then at the same time Nate turned the volume down to 0. I looked over at him and said, "But now you can't understand." And he said, "Well, now we're equal." So we're watching the football without sound or captions. And that really impacted on me because I realised he understood what it meant to be deaf and he wanted us to have the same experience. So that was really beautiful.
You didn't tell me that.
It was last week.
Oh, lovely.
Das, we're obviously here at the beach on this beautiful day, and we love a good innovation story here at the House of Wellness. And it got me thinking about the impact that batteries have on the environment. They can take hundreds of years to decompose. And scientists in the US have come up with a really unique solution involving crab shells.
Yeah, it's a brilliant story, isn't it? And I understand it's a compound they're using called chitosan that is found in the shells of crustaceans being put to really good use.
So a chitosan and zinc battery can decompose in just 5 months. So such a difference, lessening the impact on the environment.
And you think of all the lead and lithium batteries and the trouble they cause the environment. So a solution that's organic and healthy like that is just a brilliant story all around. Hey, speaking of eco-friendly, Luke Hines loves doing his bit for the environment. And I think we find him now on a beach somewhere in Australia. Over to you, Hinesy.
Thanks, Das. I'm here in Warrnambool on the southwest coast of Victoria, where you can see the procession of the southern right whales come to calf anytime between June and September. So I'm a little bit early. But what I am in time for is the incredible local produce. All kinds of fruit and veg, dairy and wine grown in some of the richest farmland in the country. All thanks to a dormant volcano. The soil is so fertile here. So stay tuned. I'll be back later with Zoe, where we pay homage to an age-old favourite, the exotic eggplant. That's coming up on the House of Wellness.
Makeup has come a long way, and today we're talking about one of the staples, foundation. The new Nude by Nature Moisture Infusion Foundation has ingredients that are clinically proven to give all-day hydration and just basically evening out that complexion. The 100% natural ingredients include vitamin C and hyaluronic acid. That gives you that beautiful, dewy, radiant glow. So when I'm applying foundation on someone, I will always use a brush for hygienic reasons. However, when I'm applying it to my skin, if I want a natural finish, I love to press it in just with my fingers. This foundation has all your favourite benefits like a buildable coverage, but without all those nasties like silicons, parabens or synthetic pigments. It's also vegan and cruelty-free. A good foundation should still show your skin's texture. So by texture, you don't want to look like you can see your foundation before you can see your skin. It's still natural, it's still glowing, but it still gives you enough coverage. So whether you're going to wear makeup for 30 minutes or 8 hours plus, you never want to use a foundation that compromises your skin's health. You wouldn't leave the house not feeling and looking good with a killer outfit. And the same can be said for your skin and makeup.
Thanks to Jade Kay there for helping us put our best face forward. Now, obviously, hydration is really important when it comes to skin, but what about how much we drink? Jack, are you a have to leave the house always with a bottle of water in your handbag?
Do you know, I always regret it when I don't because I hate buying that single-use plastic water bottle and paying all that money for the water. I need to be more organised to make sure it's always with me.
Do you drink a lot of water?
I do, Jo. One of the things I maybe do reasonably well. I played in an era if you weren't hydrated, they would send you home.
Really?
And not train, so I think that stayed with me.
Well, we've had that 8 glasses of water a day drummed into us, but is it actually right? Well, for the answer, we go to the font of all medical knowledge, Dr. Nick Carr.
When I first started in general practice, it never happened. Now it's a daily occurrence, even in winter. I'm talking about the patient who comes into my room, plonks a water bottle on my desk, and more often than not, proceeds to sip on it during the consultation. Now, it's not that I mind, but is it really necessary? I mean, we all need water, of course, and you may have heard that the average human needs around 8 glasses of water a day. Now, this is true, but what's often forgotten is the next sentence, which is, and you get a lot of that from your food. Yes, a healthy, varied diet can supply over half your average daily water needs. So why all these water bottles in recent years? Well, at least in part, I think it comes from this idea that by the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated, which sounds really scary. Well, the human race and pretty much every animal seems to have survived for tens of thousands of years using thirst as a mechanism to know when to drink. I mean, take my dogs Sam and Rosie. They charge around the park chasing the ball, they get thirsty, go and have a drink, and then they charge around some more. They don't seem too much the worse for wear. But what about flushing out all those toxins, I hear you cry? Well, that's actually a great question, but consider this. The average human kidney filters over 180 litres of blood every single day, so adding an extra litre or 2 of water is hardly likely to make a difference. And if you don't believe me, the Americans studied this. They took over 600 people with kidney disease, made half of them drink extra water. They did no better than those that just drank what they needed. Now, people who should be deliberately drinking extra water include those doing prolonged or severe exercise, like those crazy triathletes, and some older people whose thirst mechanisms may not work so well and risk getting dehydrated on hot days. Now, talking of the thirst mechanism, this turns out to be a really complicated interaction between kidneys, the circulation, and your brain. There are some clever little cells at the front of the brain called the lamina terminalis, and they can work out when you're getting a bit dry and tell you to go and have a drink. But how do you know when you've had enough? And this is the really amazing bit. It seems those cells monitor the liquid that you're swallowing, do a quick bit of arithmetic and say, yep, you've had enough. Incredible. A reminder, and this is the doctory bit, so pay close attention. If you find yourself constantly thirsty, it could be a sign of diabetes. So particularly if there's a family history of diabetes, go and get your sugar level checked. For pretty much everyone else, when you go and see your doctor, you can leave your water bottle at home.
We may differ in parenting styles, but the one thing that many parents have in common is the goal of supporting their kids' health and well-being. As a mum of 2, I know that lots of lifestyle factors can play into this, such as play, creativity, being mindful of screen time, and nutrition. Bystime 2FL HMO Pro Boost plus Vit D is an absolute mouthful to say, but it makes up for it in convenience. It's a daily immune defence supplement for kids 12 months and older. This Bystime supplement contains 2FL HMO. HMO stands for human milk oligosaccharides, which act as a prebiotic found naturally in breast milk. It feeds the beneficial bacteria in the gut, where 70% of the immune system lives. It also contains vitamin D to support a child's immune system, healthy growth and development. Proudly made in Australia with no artificial flavours, colours or sweeteners, simply mix 1 level scoop with water, milk, toddler milk drink or soft food. With so many difficult decisions to make in your child's life, this is an easy one.
Nice to be bringing the House of Wellness to you from the beautiful Brighton Beach here in Melbourne. I think we've all commented on how pristine the beach is today.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. It's not without work. The locals are always down here picking up rubbish. But, of course, the first Sunday in March every year is Clean Up Australia Day all around the country. And I feel like that has been going on for decades.
Well, it all kicked off in 1990 when a sailing king, Ian Kieran, decided to clean up his own backyard, which was Sydney Harbour.
And I didn't know you can actually take part any day of the year, but of course Sunday is the big day where we all hit the streets with our garbage bags.
I'm sure that Clean Up Australia Day has contributed to people now really thinking about leaving rubbish behind on the beach, and that is a really good thing.
Yes, absolutely. Have you heard of plogging, though?
Tell me more.
You must have heard of plogging. It's from the Swedish word, which means jogging and picking up rubbish at the same time. I've done it. It's actually quite a good workout.
And it's still actually a thing. It's got 11 million views, would you believe it, on TikTok.
TikTok, can someone please explain?
Yeah. Well, whatever you want to call it, I think if you're running along picking up rubbish, that is a very good thing. And I've seen you do it, Joe. Well done. Great stuff. Speaking of cleaning up in the kitchen, it's over to Heinzie and Zoe right now for the smooth-skinned purple vegetable. Yep, it is all about the exotic eggplant.
There's just something I love about autumn, Zoe. You can just feel it in the air. The changing colour of the leaves, those fresh, crisp mornings. And of course, I've heard people who are born in this season tend to live longer.
And did you know, Heinzie, you're more likely to fall in love in autumn? And what's there not to love with a whole new variety of fruit and vegetables that have come into season?
And one of those underrated ingredients we can celebrate is the eggplant, which is the hero of my bangin' baba ganoush, which is also used a lot in the Mediterranean diet.
It's also got a second name, aubergine, which is a French word meaning purpley brown. You know what? A little bit of a fast fact. Did you know that when aubergine first left Europe, it was actually white, hence the name eggplant?
I'm loving those little facts, but whatever you call it, it's good for you. Now, it's packed with vitamins A and C and also a powerful plant chemical called polyphenols, which are rich in antioxidants. What vegetable have you chosen?
So I've chosen the root vegetable beetroot. It's packed full of vitamins and minerals. It actually contains something called bertholane, which gives it its red, vibrant colour, as well as exerting antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties on the body.
And while it's delicious raw or cooked, I love that you're taking it to the next level by fermenting it, which is perfect as we head towards the cooler months.
You totally see where I'm going with this. You see, fermented foods are packed full of good bacteria called probiotics, which is so important for gut health. With 70 to 80% of immune cells in our gut, you can see there's such a strong correlation between a healthy gut microbiome and a healthy immune system.
And while it's so important to look after our immune health all year, it's a timely reminder as it gets colder and we head towards winter to give it a bit of a boost.
And this recipe can certainly do that. You simply pop everything in a jar, label the date, pop it at room temperature on the counter for about a week. Now, you need to let the excess air out that builds up, and once it gets to the flavour you want, pop it in the fridge. But you know the best thing about it? It's the perfect addition to a meze plate.
So is my bangin' baba ganoush.
I think we're going to have some great dinner parties.
I'm coming to your place.
No, you're not. Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Well, it's nice to be here enjoying the sun and the sand and a walk along the beach. And an event that comes around this time every year is asking people to do exactly that.
Yes, the annual walk to save our sons raises awareness and funds to fight Duchenne muscular dystrophy.
And there are actually dozens of different types of muscular dystrophy, but Duchenne's is the most common, and it overwhelmingly affects boys, and really sadly, the symptoms normally start in childhood.
The charity was started by Ali Eid, whose son Emilio was diagnosed with the disease. And as you say, it's about to kick off right around the country. Here's Ali to explain.
Duchenne muscular dystrophy, in short, is a muscle wasting condition. Kids are normally diagnosed between the ages of 3 to 5, confined in a wheelchair between 7 and 12, and most will not live past their early to mid-20s. They used to live up until the early to mid-teens, so we have made a lot of advancements, and the way we're going, hopefully, it will continue to surpass, and hopefully one day I can tell you early to mid-30s and so on. My son Emilio was diagnosed 2 days short of his 2nd birthday. He's now 18, and the older he gets, obviously, the harder the days become. He's very resilient, just like many of our boys, they're very resilient. And instead of us reassuring them it's going to be okay, they're reassuring us. But the sad reality for our boys and my son Emilio is they're watching the world surpass them. These kids need a purpose, and it's important that the community and the educational department help our children because they already feel behind the 8 ball. I want to walk for those kids who can't walk. We're walking for you. We're now also walking in memory and honour of those we've lost along the way because they've set the journey, they've set the path, and we don't want their death to go in vain. We're probably going to walk over 120 kilometres over 6 days, and the purpose of our walk is to go visit the boys in their schools. And we ask the family and friends when we get to the schools to walk them in, to do a guard of honour, make them feel special, but more importantly, the walk carries a very, very important message to all children. And that message is about inclusion. It's so important, it doesn't matter what the condition is, not just Duchenne. Any child with a disability, any child. Inclusion is key. For a mammoth organisation like Chemist Warehouse to take on a rare disease and a rare charity, they're always there. Having them on our side has been nothing short of, I want to tell you, phenomenal.
To get behind the fight to find a cure or to donate, head to saveoursons.org.au.
Well, that's all we've got time for today. We really enjoyed our day down at the beach. We should do this more often.
And we've definitely immersed ourselves in blue spaces. It works, doesn't it?
I think it's so lovely. Maybe we should just come back here and film here again next week.
We definitely should do that. And in the meantime, check out myself and Gerald Quigley on House of Wellness Radio every Sunday.
Never miss it, Joe. That's all we've got time for. Thanks to our great friends at Chemist Warehouse. We'll see you next week.